Hi, my name is Bill Tibbetts, and I am with Crossroads Urban Center, and we have sent questions about housing and homelessness to all of the candidates for mayor and city council in Salt Lake City this year because we know that the people who support us are interested in those issues. Today, I am talking with Eva Lopez, who is running for the city council in District 4. And we sent each candidate 5 questions, and so I'll read through each question and give her a chance to respond. Our first question is about housing for people who have an extensive history of homelessness and some sort of disabling condition. Do you support the production of sufficient permanent supportive housing to meet the needs of people with physical and mental disabilities in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill, and thanks to everyone at the Crossroads Urban Center and those that are listening and watching. It's really important to participate in our elections, so thank you so much. First, let me start by saying I think the metric that we need to be discussing housing insecurity with is permanent housing solutions. And I want everyone to know that housing is a human right, and we have a role as city leaders to leverage all of our tools readily available. That includes our budget, our building and planning our housing stock out. That's for both existing and new housing inventory. So with the help of our state and our county, I believe all of our entities have a responsibility to create permanent supportive housing for community members that have different abilities. We need to expand our scope of housing solutions beyond intake centers and directly help clients achieve supportive care and housing. So my answer is yes, we absolutely need and to support it. And that means supporting it through our funding mechanisms, as well as our policy levers that we have.
Okay, our second question is related. It's about permanent supportive housing for families with children. In recent years, we've had families staying at the shelter for up to 2 years because they need more support than they can get at a shelter, and that has led to the shelters being full and families with kids being turned away at the shelter. So the question is, would you commit to actively support efforts to build 200 units of child-centered supportive housing in Salt Lake County during the next 5 years to fully meet the current need?
Yeah, absolutely, without zero hesitation. This is something that it's a symptom that we face as a society. It's a failure when a child is left on the street or housing insecure. It's not a failure of their families. They're trying the best they can. I'm really proud to live in a city that cares about its future inheritors. I got to work with some of these children, whether or youth at the VOA or in Youth City. And it matters to see these young residents get the care that they desperately need because it's trauma that they're facing when they're put in these extremities where they can't decide or find a place where they're going to reside in for the night. It matters to us. So I want to make sure that we have opportunities accessible to these children and these youth, regardless of which zip code you are in our city, or if you live in District 4. I think not a single child should be left to face these traumas and extremities of housing insecurity. We need to preserve their health and well-being at all costs. And for me personally, I don't tolerate any child being left behind without the support of their community. Children deserve to dream and they deserve to live in childlike states. And supporting our kids is the right thing to do. It's the Salt Lake thing to do for us.
Okay, thank you. Our third question is about, we have a lot of development going on in the city. Sometimes that development destroys existing affordable housing. Do you support the creation of a tenant relocation assistance program in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, I absolutely do. So when you asked this question, it reminded me of the recent news story in the Salt Lake Tribune about 101-year-old Molly Segura and her family. And this individual, this longtime resident of Salt Lake City, has been physically displaced from her original home back when I-15 was created. And now for a second time, she faces potential displacement because of the expansion of I-15. And this is just an example where housing being displaced to build out, whether that's I-15 or with the replacement of more luxury condominiums, we are now displacing 5 generations of Seguras, including 101-year-old Molly Segura. And this is unacceptable. That's crazy to me. We should absolutely be doing everything we can in our potential to preserve as early as we can while acknowledging those private property rights. I want to help these families like the Seguras become empowered through tenant relocation assistance. It's one of the few vehicles that we can drive that will actually help them relocate to different formidable areas within our city, not outside our city. And we can do this by working with developers to secure a first right to housing policy, meaning those that are displaced have access to different housing inventory that has replaced their current living situation. That's really important to me. I think this is one of the few policies that we can propagate in our city to help these families access the housing supply that is virtually displacing them. And it's no secret we live in a state that limits tenant rights. I acknowledge that, but I'm excited to see the city begin to create new funding tools to help our residents stay in our neighborhoods. This is what makes Salt Lake City so great. I want all of us to stay here.
Okay, thank you. The next question that we sent you is about the responsibility of developers who eliminate affordable housing to replace those units or help replace them. Do you support the creation of a community benefit policy to prevent the loss of existing affordable housing units in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, I believe that through this public process, it's necessary. It's necessary to involve the public in order to mitigate and act in a transparent manner. And so, yes, this community benefit policy is important because these are traumas that our community experiences with displacement. And that includes the daily whiplash of new construction and the demolition of memorable locations, whether that's the Tudor-style brick homes in Central 9th that was housed our working class families, or the different middle housing that we desperately seek. But a community benefit agreement or more permanent policy like you're talking about, it's a great tool to help include our residents in formal process, to be transparent and to discuss unit replacement. As leaders in our city, we should attempt to preserve whenever possible, again, as early as possible, while acknowledging those private property rights in the state.
Okay, the last question we sent each of the candidates is this. Do you support efforts to increase funding to address homelessness and housing instability in the city?
Yeah, it's no secret that even with the current budget increases, we're trying to mediate housing instability and homelessness, but it's not enough. Our current adopted budget is $20 million. That's for our current fiscal year, or excuse me, for our incoming fiscal year. 17 million of that was allocated towards the RDA, $3 million allocated towards housing and general funds. To me, that confirms a desperation to find the housing solutions that should have been addressed years ago in our city. It's going to take the support of our state and county to address these costly solutions. This year alone, after the 2023 legislative session, over $198 million were allocated towards affordable housing and homelessness initiatives. So for me, I want to ensure that all government entities measure homelessness response the same, not a crime response, not a crisis intervention, but through a lens of housing. We need to bolster our coffers however possible and find the funding apparatuses to stimulate city-owned assets, ensure that the RDA is capitalizing on city-owned properties and subsidizing our different housing projects, such as The Point. It's time Salt Lake City gets in the business of building housing. It's important that we're leveraging our city-owned assets to create space and utilize with intention every square footage available to us. The funding matters, but so does the entity that develops these housing inventory projects. Our residents need the city to provide safe housing options.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking time to meet with us and to answer the questions we sent you. What can people do if they want to learn more about you and your campaign?
Yeah, well, first, thank you again for listening. Go to my website, go to eva4council.com. That's eva4council.com. I've got a lot of information, whether you want to register to vote, learn about ranked choice voting, get involved with our campaign. You can come canvass with me on a weekend, or you can come introduce me to your neighbors. I want to meet you, and I'm excited to be a candidate for you in District 4. Thanks so much, Bill.
No, thank you for, we need people running for office. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.